Anybody is new to the series here?
Yes.
Who is new to the series? Everybody.
Ja, ook van Israël.
Except for us.
Who is from Israel?
Those.
You're from Israel. Who else is from Israel? You, the three of you?
No.
You are all Israelis? No, the two of you are Israelis? So we have Israelis in the audience. Wonderful. All right. So, for any of you who don't know this series, Beethoven on Steroids is a concert series dedicated to the 32 Beethoven sonatas. We played them all in sequence. In the first three concerts in 2014, before my trip to Mexico, we played all of the pieces from the early period. Now you don't know much maybe about it, maybe you do. Traditionally, we divide the life of Beethoven into three creative phases. We say that in the early period, he was still kind of imitating more or less the styles of Mozart and Haydn who came before him, and of course with some innovations and some ideas. But in the middle period, Beethoven goes into full creative mode, and he is totally innovating the sonata form. Piano sonata is some kind of a form of writing, of arranging material, of organizing music. It has a certain structure. And people before Beethoven, specifically Mozart and Haydn, but also many other people, Clementi, other people, wrote piano sonatas, and they had a certain structure. Always you have a first movement that is kind of fast, then you have a slow movement, sometimes you have a dance movement, then you have another kind of movement in the end, the finale, very brilliant, or some kind of more free form. And here comes Beethoven, and he's putting the whole structure in question. Tonight we're going to play pieces from the middle period. So first of all, you see that each one of them has a name. Formally or informally, this music was so creative and so imaginative that either Beethoven or other people gave it names. You have the Funeral March sonatas, you have the Moonlight Sonata, you have two other sonatas that I will present later. One thing remarkable about all of the four pieces that I'm going to play tonight, they don't have a first movement that is fast. Three of them start with a slow movement, and the last one starts with a movement that is called fast, but it doesn't really sound fast. Listen, does this sound like a fast movement? Does this strike you as a fast movement? No. But from all of these four pieces, this is the fastest first movement that we have. Because the other three are like this. How's that for a first movement? Not very fast either. So it's totally breaking the form, and he's doing things that are really quite, I mean, today, of course, we know everything, but 200 years ago, when this was written, when Beethoven is like in his late 20s, early 30s, this was unheard of. Totally revolutionary form. And this was probably the talk of the day between people who were following, you know, what was actually being written in the period. It was a very intense period, the turn of the century, 1800. Haydn was still creating, he was still writing symphonies. For example, you know, the Creation, this big orchestral piece was written after 1800. They were creating on a parallel. And tonight we're going to play four sonatas. I will present the first one. It's the Funeral March Sonata. So it will start with a beautiful andante, beautiful slow movement of great grace and elegance, really a very noble character. I don't know how Beethoven manages to write something that is so uplifting in nature. The music simply radiates optimism and, yeah, like, how do you say that in English? Bienestar. Anybody speak Spanish here? Bienestar. Yes, bienestar. But how do you say that in English? Yes, well-being. It communicates this sense of well-being, the theme of this andante, and then it gives variations of it. And in the best tradition of Beethoven, the first variation sounds very similar to the theme, really to ingrain it in our minds, and then it goes a little bit wild. The second one is almost jazzy with like sharp rhythms. Then there is a slow variation that is kind of sad, and Beethoven is generally creating connections inside his music to create unity in the piece. This variation of the theme that starts right already. Quite a contrast after the one before was. And after that suddenly you have. This is the Funeral March Sonata, and he's already hinting here at this. there is another jumpy variation, and the last one, if the opening was elegant and noble, the last one is like sitting on a cotton cloud. It is so caressing and beautiful and melodic. Beethoven goes all out with lyricism and romanticism that of course were not yet invented in this period, but it's a beautiful ending to this first movement. After that there is a tempestuous scherzo, very violent and very rhythmical, and then you sink all into this funeral march. Now today, of course, people who listen to this music already know many other funeral marches. Everybody knows this one by Chopin. Everybody knows that one. How does the funeral march go from the Schumann quintet? You remember that one? The second movement of that. Yes, I forget how it was already. For some reason I have a blank. But even you have this the funeral march from the Eroica Symphony, this one. Everybody knows this one. Trying to gain time, maybe the Schumann will come to my mind, but no. Ah, this one, of course. Of course. Which key it was? This one. Writing this one in the sonata that we play today, he doesn't have these points of reference. He is basically trading virgin territory. What he's writing here is a pioneer work. It is very expressive, very, very beautiful, very full of the emotion really of losing a dear one. And even he is giving in the title, he says, funeral march to the death of the hero. And it does sound very heroic, beautiful. And then what comes out of it is really another one of these pieces that he simply runs back and forth over the keyboard, just simply to clear the air and to be able to finish on a high note. Most everybody who writes a funeral march has this practice of finishing with a movement that simply clears the atmosphere after that. So this is the Sonata number 12, the Funeral March Sonata. I hope that you enjoy it. It's one of my favorites. It's very, very beautiful. Before I start playing it, I will just say something else. The number 13 and number 14 that we play after them, both of them, okay, we talked about opus numbers, but most of you are new. You know what is an opus number, what it means an opus number? When you give to a piece, we say opus 26, opus 28, it means the order that the pieces are published. Yeah, the first one that you publish is opus 1, the second one is opus 2. These pieces tonight, they're kind of consecutive. It's opus 26, what I'm going to play now, and then there are two sonatas that are both of them opus 27, number 1 and number 2, and both of them he calls sonata quasi una fantasia. It means actually, we call it a piano sonata, but we a little bit let go of the formal structure. It's more like a fantasy, it's not completely structured, but if you listen to this one also sounds very much like a fantasy, maybe in some ways even more than the two other sonatas. I will talk about them later. We need to do some playing also.